Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your time and attention thus far. It's kind of like in the opening statement, I said it's a preview, and then during the witnesses and items you received, you viewed, heard, accepted into evidence, that's the actual evidence. What I will say is truth is stranger than fiction. Kind of hear that phrase throughout our lives because things we see on the news and hear from friends and things you just can't believe that happened. And in this case, we've heard about Barry and his heart condition, and the medications you can see photos of, and you can tell some of the medicines, one was tramadol, a narcotic, he was prescribed. Continued drinking alcohol to the point of a neighbor's concern for his well-being because he had been in the hospital, had these heart problems, he had his medication, yet he still consumed so much alcohol. To the point a neighbor, not even like a close friend, said to him, like, hey, you want to do something about that, I'm concerned. Injectable medicine, syringes, needles he had for the medicines he needed. And bear with me for a moment. I'm going to ask you to infer, which I believe the state has asked you to do the entire time, is take these items of evidence and then infer from them as to what took place. And you heard from the neighbor lady who was there and heard some noises, and it sounded like it was a brief period. She heard some things. It didn't rise to the level of calling the police or 911 or being that worried or going upstairs and knocking and checking. Just with some gay men, I'm kind of stay out of it. Heard some banging or some noise, and then somebody saying no. And that was it. But it was like a week or two later, she talked to law enforcement when they came around and checked with the different neighbors. But up to that point, it had never concerned her to reach out. It was never anything that serious. And maybe as time has gone on, this case has gone on, it's become more so. I don't know. But at that point, she didn't feel compelled to reach out or go up there or call anyone or do anything with it. So infer they get back. They had been at Cruisers, we know that. And then they walk back and say there is some argument about tracking whereabouts, and because there's concerns if he's seeing other men, and being done with this, and Barry's going to leave, and Chris is like, no, don't go, and then they're both drinking. They're both probably 2 hours of drinking, it seemed, from their seat for like $100. Nobody mentioned eating anything, so that's all alcohol. And it's at Cruisers in Cape Coral, so they're probably not $15 a cocktail. It's probably much lower than that, so they probably consume quite a bit. And Barry leaves and goes wandering down Beach Parkway, and if you heard, Beach Parkway goes kind of through the river in Cape Coral, and then there's canals all around it. And say someone's coming down Beach Parkway and mows them down because they're drunk too, a DUI manslaughter. Oh my God, my life's ruined. What do I do? Crap. Bury in the car and go. Meanwhile, his wallet fell out and is now in a storm drain. Well, let's get rid of that. Let's blame it all on Chris. Let's infer from the evidence, everything, it's all on him, the mastermind here. Or it was simple as meeting a Mel on Grindr. We heard about that. We knew he was on it because the detective even told you, yes, there was, in our investigation, he had been on there and he got scammed by someone for money. The person needed help. Even a friend or neighbor had talked about it too. And so he's on this app, which we heard from one of the gentlemen that it was a Mel app for hookups in the gay community. Say it's as simple as someone said, sure, I'll swing by and get you. I'll be on Beach Parkway. No, don't leave. I'm drunk, I'm going to bed. He's going off with friends. And then they come by, pick him up. Who knows? He has a heart condition. Something bad takes place. Well, let's blame it all on Chris. That's a simple, reasonable explanation. He left. He's half drunk. He's on all these meds. He has these heart issues. There's lots of canals around there. Who knows what happens? Truth is stranger than fiction. And the state wasn't there. They're so certain as if this is exactly what happened, yet but things don't add up. You know, their theory is not consistent. Why is that? Because their one theory is he's this mastermind that goes off radar and uses VoIPs and is so savvy technical, yet every little thing he does is on the phone. Every search he conducts, and where he goes to, and text messages he sends back and forth, like it's all on there. Like they got his phone and they checked it and examined it. And so on one hand, it's, like I said, he's so smart and savvy and technically inclined and can stay off the radar, and yet he goes to like Walmart where everybody knows they have 1,000 cameras like Target and Publix, and anywhere you go nowadays, there's a camera looking right at you. So there's no getting around that. Same with ATMs when you take money out. There's cameras, it's right there. I mean, there's no getting around that nowadays, this day and age. But yet he's such a mastermind, he can stay off the radar. Like, I mean, it went as far as, well, look, he parked a little further out this time. Is that to get out the exit real quick? Or maybe in the one shot, there wasn't anywhere else to park. I mean, he parked farther down. Maybe you don't want to get the Jeep banged up. So, had some notes on some things, and then I'll go through some of the witnesses. And I was going to mention too, is when he was at the Airbnb and he's constant communication with the lady about what he's doing, when he's going to leave. Hey, if you had a broom, I'd have swept up. I couldn't find one. So that kind of says, hey, there's some stuff there I'd clean up for you, but I couldn't find a way to do it. She later cleans it up, leaves him this glowing review, you know, wonderful, stay, you know, good things to say. But he says, I'm going for a run, and then later she sees him coming back from the run. So he's not like off radar, hiding out, pulling up to the back of the Airbnb, sneaking in the back door, going, you know, leaving. We saw pictures of the front and back. So his actions in other places don't match like this mastermind that's like trying to stay off the radar. So maybe why an Airbnb? You know, what can we infer as to that? Well, Barry's leaving. The thought is he's with friends. Things are fine. There's nothing to worry about. Well, why don't I go stay somewhere? Then when he comes back, he's like, well, where's Chris gone? So now he's calling me. You know, it's kind of a relationship thing. I mean, it was only like a 2-month from Cinco de Mayo to this time. You know, but that's kind of what it was. Well, this is his condo. I'll go stay somewhere else. So he goes to some random Airbnb in Cape Coral. We saw pictures of the driveway. He pulls up and he goes there. And then he gets the one in Clewiston. Let's get one a little further. This one's kind of boring. And he goes out there, and then all the photos with look, there's a little dirt. The front wheels have kicked up a little dirt here. He was in a rural area, so he must have been doing something horrific. And later, I don't know, he came back. It was on the Saturday, and he goes in the condo, and the packages are in there. And he thinks, well, wait a minute, someone's been in here. Has Barry been back? And he's put the packages in there, and then he's down at the pool, and he mentions that later when he reports it to the police. Well, he must have came in, and they're like, well, why are you reporting him missing? And on his watch here, which they both had watches, for what it's worth.
Objection, Judge, based on evidence.
I'll sustain the objection and counsel may continue.
Thank you. So concern when he came back was, okay, well, maybe he came by here because now these packages that apparently have his name on them that he ordered, whether they were personal or work related, are now in the condo. So when he reports it, it's like he must have been here. Then there's the talk about the Italian dinner. And then it's, okay, well, you can't find that. It's not on his phone that he sent it. So we see that it's a VoIP or a number we can't per se track. So now he's like the mastermind. Yet they got his phone and there's nothing on there about going to some website to create some number to send some text message. Like there's just total absence of any of that. So, but he's thinking he had been by there, and so there's not really concern now. But then I talked to Miguel, and Miguel tells me, like, no, we haven't heard from him. Now he gets worried. And he calls the Lee County Sheriff, and then they talk about how long it took him to call. I mean, maybe he had to look up. You don't want to call 911, since it wasn't an ambulance or someone right away. So he found the non-emergency number and called it and reported it, and then an officer came out, and you saw that. And so every little action of what he does is analyzed. Why is he going to Walmart? Well, maybe he's going to move out. And since Barry left the Jeep, he's going to use the Jeep. Barry keeps the Jeep pristine, which if you saw pictures, it was pretty clean there. So let's get something to protect the inside as I fill it with items I own so it doesn't scratch things up. Later let's buy a chemical, let's buy this new car smell. Let's keep it the way Barry would like it. Let's be respectful. Then later, again, the inference for the Ace Hardware, like, again, another store, it's going to be on camera. There's, like you said, no getting around that. Why buy a shovel? Does he know somebody out in that area and he's going to help put in a mailbox? Like nobody goes beyond and finds the answer. Supposedly he's like mysteriously off the radar or something and doing nefarious things as to innocent explanations that can be there. Let's infer the worst. Then I was going to mention the Cape Coral Ace, where things are left. Well, someone else can maybe use it. I don't need it anymore. Help somebody out with it, so let's leave it, and then somebody else can maybe get some use out of it. But if he's such the mastermind, it goes off the radar. Well, the Caloosahatchee's on the way. Why not just toss it in there, or toss it out in the woods? Like if you're really trying to get rid of something bad because you've done something wrong, why not get rid of it like there? Why go to an Ace, in a city where there's cameras everywhere and surveillance and all this stuff? And then the normal routine of going to the Starbucks, because now you continue going to the Starbucks. And so I was going to bring that up. As normal times in life, you go places, Publix, and see the cashier, or the Starbucks, and you recognize people. You don't stop and tell them your whole life story sometimes. Maybe you do, but sometimes they're busy. You don't say, well, yeah, I just got out of the hospital, I had surgery, things are horrible, my aunt died. Like, you don't tell them your real life story. You just kind of give them a little snippet and move on. Oh, he's with friends, or he's off on business, or where's he at? So you just kind of tell them something and move on, and they go back to working. Then about the tow truck, and I brought that up because you heard it's not on a rotating list. They call this one company for specific situations, I guess. And I imagine, like, you have vehicles that crash and people die. You have DUI manslaughter where people die in horrific scenes and consequences. And so you have this one tow company for specific situations that come out. And now they're taking equipment and they're hooking it up to this car, this Jeep, because I asked them, was it on dollies, so then they kind of roll it up? Or is it, no, it's hooked up to like a line, and then it's pulled up into the tow truck. So it's not in a Tyvek suit, it's not sanitized or clean. We didn't hear anything about that. So we just know it's this tow truck that goes to real serious situations and scenes, maybe deaths and things like that, and accidents and bad situations, and hooks the equipment up, and God knows where it's been and what it's touched, and pulls the Jeep up. And then the Jeep, we know, is followed and it goes to the evidence and storage. And the judge will go through the instructions with you, and you'll get a copy of them, so don't worry about that. Some of them you saw appear on the screen earlier when the state was talking. And he'll indicate what we say as the attorneys is not evidence. It's intended to assist you or arguments when you deliberate. And had a couple responses to what the state argued in their closing. The videos, they're in evidence. You can view them again if you want, but even some of the snippets you saw earlier with them walking up Del Prado, it just doesn't appear or ever look like someone in some like serious heated end of relationship argument that's being argued to you as to what really was going on. And at Cruisers, we know from the bartender Sean that was there, because we asked him about the receipt and why does it have this other name on there? Oh, because the tab was with that bartender. So, and then it's so sure, like, well, Barry had the card and he paid for it, and then now Chris has the card. How do we know Chris didn't have the card to begin with? If you get those records, which are in evidence, and you can go through them, you're going to see charges before July 19th. Winn-Dixie, you'll see others like via Apple Pay, and these all occurred before any of this, like time at Cruisers. So there's earlier charges on there. And what it was is Chris had gone to the Cinco de Mayo party, and we heard about this guy, maybe Rainey, that he had been dating, and that's how I knew the one fellow that lived there with Miguel and Tom. So he came to the party, and Chris was there even before the Rainey guy came, because he came later, but Chris had already left. And then he had met, like, ooh, who's that? And he reached out and got Barry's number later, kind of moved in with him. But here in this case, the state wants you to infer Chris is this violent, evil person, you know, go from the simple walking up Del Prado to go back to the place to now this like homicidal person based on some little argument about, you know, I guess it's spun out of was an open relationship, was he seeing other men, you know, was he concerned about that, who he was talking to. But we're supposed to like infer like he's going to do something so horrible. Again, even that night, if you infer, we know Barry had firearms in there. We saw from the safe, the bullets, the guns, a couple long guns, a couple pistols. Those were found in the apartment. Did one of them get pulled out? Did somebody do something in defense? Did Barry have a medical episode? None of this we know. Nobody knows. You know, but the state and the government here is so certain, no. He did something horrible, we don't know what, and we want you to find him guilty. Then to talk about Miss Weber went in, well that was a Saturday, went to the pool, to the point, like he done something so horrible, but then he comes back and he brings the neighbor up to the condo. Like, come on up with me. And then she sees a wallet. I mean, how do we know she didn't see Chris's wallet? We hear from the evidence Barry may have had more than one wallet. It may have been two.
Objection, Judge. That's not evidence.
This one.
Yeah, so we'll submit to you that there's a lot of cards. You can look through the pictures of the different ones. And I would submit the evidence showed there may have had multiple wallets, but Miss Weber may have seen like Chris's, like she's just glancing, like I noticed this in the kitchen and I noticed that. And then we know from what we see on the body cam, which you can watch again, when the officer went in there, exactly how it looked. And it didn't look like Miguel had said. If you remember, Miguel and Tom, they went on the, I guess Friday. And they said, oh, it was distraught, and there was stuff everywhere, and it just knocked away Barry kept it. And, but that's not what we see on the body cam when the officer shows up and he's there. So it's, I don't know if it's with time, people start adding things in their mind and really believe that's what the case was or not. And with my argument, I'm just going to make it to you. I create a picture of the verdict form and put on there how you should fill it out. I'll leave that to you as the jury to do. And then I had a point which I made earlier about the records. If you look at those, the records financial, you'll see the charges before the 19th. And I brought up too about the Anna Teresa place, about he had been there before already. Unless they do free consults, he may have had a card already on file, but it was unknown if that was the case. You know, so was the card really run, or was that one they already had in their system? He just wants to run that card short. Because they kept saying that he had the card, and it's not known. So again, with the party and meeting them and moving in, and this wasn't like a 10-year marriage or some like long-term serious relationship that's now falling apart. It was, you know, some guys, and you heard Chris had dated a few people, Rainey, the other guy who was the bartender at one point. Now he's dating Barry. So he can go out and date someone else. It's not like his world is over. Now, Barry was taking care of him in that you didn't hear he had a job or his own money at that point. So he was maybe trying to get his life back on track and find work. But, and he did tell the one neighbor like he wouldn't really have much of anything. He was kicked out, but I guess he could go to his mom's and live and find a job, and if he wants to date someone else in the future, so be it. But it's not, the world's not over as if this is like some serious long-term relationship. And again, you get the videos of them going to Del Prado, and you can see, does that look like some like crazy, you know, argument where people are away from each other and screaming and yelling, and it's that heated? No, it looks like they're just kind of walking close to each other and talking or whatnot. Then, yeah, there was, I think the state in their argument indicated, and he killed them on the way back from cruisers. And if I'm wrong on my memory of the argument, that's what we believe is heard, but that's all speculation as to what took place. And it's taking what evidence we have and trying to put together what happened or may have happened. There was a text I noticed when we were looking at the text messages and stuff they put on the screen. There was one from July 4th at 11 p.m. and it was purportedly from Barry. And if you look at it, there's no space, period, space. There's actually zero punctuation in there. And then, so the argument is, well, was this something typed? Was this the text to voice? Was this, again, that's argument. None of that's in evidence. But what it is we have this small window of time where we're looking at some messages and saying, well, that's how this person always does it and has always done it and must always do it. And so then that means this is from him, but that one's not from him. And it's again, it's just speculation. And it's trying to look at these things in the light most unfavorable to Mr. Davis. And then again, the VoIP, and I mean, they examine his phone, they find nothing on there of him going to some website to create some phone number and send some message. With the Starbucks, the card, like I mentioned before, you can see earlier charges. I already talked about, like, you don't say everything like, where's Barry at? Okay, well, let's stop. we were a cruiser, and there was an argument, we were drunk, and like, you don't say all that. You're just like, well, he's out, or he's with friends, or he's doing work, like, and you go on. But his kind of pattern there, going to the Starbucks in the morning, didn't change, as if like something horrible had happened. At this point, and that was up to talking to Miguel, he thought Barry had gone and was staying with friends, and well, I'll show him and I'll go stay somewhere else, and then he'll wonder where I'm at. But then he talks to Miguel and he gets really worried because he hears, what, you haven't talked to him? He hasn't talked to you guys? You haven't heard from him? He's not with you? And then there's inferences about the phone, the broken phone. Remember I asked one of the witnesses, well, they can, if you got a bad battery, they can repair that too. So we don't know why that type of place was sought out, but we're speculating there's a phone and it's broken and we don't know. Then there's the mistake in the date of birth. Maybe he's upset, scared, worried, and he's trying to tell the officer what he knows. And the officer's kind of, well, I mean, if he was here and he saw this, he went to dinner with somebody, maybe wait. So he was like, maybe Tuesday or Wednesday. So he's just trying to go along with what's being said to him. And then there's talk about the cats, and we heard even this morning from the detective a little bit about that. Whether the scratches came from there. If anybody, use your common sense here. I mean, I got cats but use your common sense and what you know of cats, and sometimes they just jump, but we never heard anyone explain what kind of like how they left, who took them, did they use a leash or harness or something, because you can't like tell them come on and like go get in the car and take them away. You got to either take hold of them or use a harness or something around them to remove them from the condo. And that's just some unanswered question. And he must be lying that he had the, cat scratch got him. That's something that could happen. He must have been in the brumble or the brush. So I was going to kind of just run through some of the witnesses we heard testify. We heard from Miguel, longtime friend of Barry, who met Chris at the Cinco de Mayo party, and then they rented an Airbnb. Like at first it was so odd. Got an Airbnb, but even Miguel, they get the Airbnb for Tom's, so you can kind of set up, and Tom doesn't know about it, and surprise him, I guess. But he knew about Barry's medical situation, heart condition. He was aware, asking about some of the medicines he was taking and whatnot. And he saw, because he was talking about the phone calls, like, well, I know that's his voice. And it's like, okay, it's been 2 years now. But even way back then, you saw the guy once at the Cinco de Mayo party, and you saw him at Tom's birthday, and you're not really having a lot of talk. And you mentioned maybe a dinner. So he's only heard this guy a few times, and you might be able to say Barry, who's known a long time. That doesn't sound like Barry. But whether or not, how certain can he be who it is? Then you heard from Ruth about the pool and who she would see down there. You did hear from one of the neighbors about, like, everybody would say that he didn't let anybody drive the car, and then he would be surprised to hear that neighbor in the condo drove the car. For what it's worth, it's like everyone's so certain on his behavior, like, no, he would never let anybody else drive his car. And you'd be surprised to hear maybe if it was the airport, okay, like in its reception or something, to drive the Jeep. And she didn't see others driving it. Then you hear about an Uber. They get dropped off at the cruisers. I guess they don't have to walk all the way down there, but then they decide to walk back so they can talk or whatnot. And let's do whatever. I made some of the witnesses here. We heard from Rosalie. She knew too about the heart condition. And he was supposed to come up and visit. And then what was odd was with the real personal friends, like for the people from Illinois is they knew like a lot of things about his life, his business, and like his life, but the whole like dating world and seeing other people, that was like a total off-limit area. We just don't talk about that. I wouldn't even ask him about that. Or, you know, with her it came up, well, why'd your camera go off? Oh, someone's in your condo? Oh, you're dating somebody? It just seemed odd that that was such a gray area that none of the friends were let to know about. But I guess Miguel, one of the friends down here, those they did know about the, like maybe the scam, the person on Grindr he had met or something that scammed them for money. Let's see, then we heard from Mr. Blondin. I think I got the name of the bartender wrong before. It's Christopher Blondin was the bartender at Cruisers. And they just sat at the bar. No one got loud. He used a card, but that was the cashier, Greg. And then there was Sean Ribbentrop, who lives with Miguel. He's a technical award. He said they contacted through this Grindr app to get the phone number, and he didn't have it, so he had to ask someone else for it. And he was actually at Cruisers with Jeff, Miguel's other roommate. And Jeff went and spoke with Chris or Barry, one of them, at one point. And then soon after they left, and it was like Barry walked out, and then soon after Chris walks out, and then we see him on the camera. Like, it's not like a big scene or a big situation that's being made out to be. But it has to be made bigger to explain what they want you to believe took place, like what explanation the state's come up with here. We hear from Kim Zen Soltani. She talked about seeing him at the beach, meeting Chris and Barry at a condo. They went to Gasparilla Island or whatever one day, came back. They would both be up walking 4:30 in the morning, 6 to 7 miles. That was after the health scare. He lost a lot of weight. What else? And Miss Hernandez, that was a lady out with the Airbnb. She said, no, I didn't think it was odd. He was just drying out some clothes. I mean, maybe he went for a jog, his clothes got sweaty and like wet, and he hung them there, and now they're drying. No, it didn't seem odd. And then he was leaving, yeah, I saw him, and I did notice he wasn't the Tyler guy. Like, you know, again, he's some mastermind of let's create this fake account. It's his brother's account. And we heard the detective even say, yeah, I found out apparently when he investigated that and talked with his brother that his account got canceled or something. And so he was using the brother's account. Like again, that's all tracked. So it's not like it's something you're doing that's hidden. And he even messaged her about, I would have cleaned up, but I couldn't find a broom. Don't worry about it, I'll clean it up. And she did say it was a little dirtier than normal, with some debris and stuff around the couch, and then the sand in the bathroom. So whatever, if he, like I submitted before, what can we infer? Was he helping put in a mailbox with a friend? Was he helping do some other project? Who knows? Let's just infer the worst. But or what it's worth. She cleaned it up and gave him a great review. Some of the other witnesses we heard from, the Starbucks lady, Ms. Soltiani, she came back again. We heard from a number of witnesses more than once. And the second time Ms. Zan Soltani got up, I asked her, because she was identifying, like, I think that's Chris Davis on there. It's like, you met him the one time, and then you're at the beach, and now you're like an expert on his voice. But I said, had you ever heard him on the phone before? Because some people sound different talking on the phone, but no, I never talked to him on the phone. Then we heard from Miguel again, the detective again, and Mr. Joby. We heard from him. He was important because he took the meds to sleep. He woke up early, and he heard a plastic noise. And the big deal was made of that, the light was out, but he testified, well, I saw him, and he was turning the light on. So again, he's trying to be this mastermind who's trying to like hide and be deceptive and do things under the radar, why is he turning the light on? Like, leave it off. I mean, now it's illuminated, and you know, whoever, if you're trying to hide who you are, why are you turning it on? So and my last question was like, so we fixed it, like it was off and he put it back on. And then he later said he looked like he was carrying beach chairs down there. Okay, well, put beach chairs in there, they can easily hit the sides of that Jeep and tear stuff up. So maybe it's like we are breaking up. I need to start packing stuff up and taking it away from here. So but let's infer the worst. And again, it was kind of like, I couldn't say 100%, I didn't see his face, but I know his body, there was only 3 males, like, oh, was it him or not? Like he had said before on his walks, he would see him be afar, because he would go out for walks early. And so it's like a neighbor, it's like somebody right up there that you know, like, he's like scared and went in, and again, this is 2 years later, so I don't know if there's some addition to it, like this was scared, and like, if it's that serious, why didn't you call the police? Or, if it's somebody you know and have talked to before, why not step out? Like, hey, I gave you a hand, what are you doing? Got to carry the beach chairs for you? Like, some of it doesn't make sense. It's just what I'll submit to you. Then we heard the folks at the Brenda, this Torah, the Ace Hardware in Clewiston. She worked there. Guy came in and bought the stuff. It was on the camera. From Mr. Wilson. Again, he did see the cats inside. I remember asking him about that, about the smell. Because everybody else was like, I never saw the cats, or I saw one cat on the lanai, or I didn't see any cats if they were hiding. And he was like, yeah, you could smell it. You know, if everybody has cats, you can smell the litter box. So such a big deal was made out of buying like the new car smell, and then like the Yankee Candle freshener things, like. So maybe it was to help with that smell. And you heard from Mr. Hewitt, the gentleman who walked out back. You see on the video, like, hey, what are you doing? That's for cardboard. And I guess you can re-watch it, because he said after he thought he was walking in that the person must have left it there, but nothing really happens after he's walking in. So it must have already been left there, like, here, I don't need it anymore, take it, somebody else can use it, or get rid of it. But again, if he's the mastermind, let's throw it out in the woods, or throw it in the Caloosahatchee, or like if there's some nefarious purpose behind it that you've done, get rid of it, not bring it back to an Ace Hardware. And then Detective Bierman again, we saw pictures of the Jeep, it had a little bit of dirt on it, but we know he'd been in a rural area. And even if you look at that Airbnb and the pictures out there in Clewiston, like, a lot of those roads are dirt. And so just, I mean, if you push the gas too hard and the wheels spin, some dirt kicks up on there, it's like, oh my God, he's killed somebody, there's dirt on here. It's everything, like the worst is assumed and the light most unfavorable to the defendant. But when you look at other innocent explanations, it's, oh yeah, well, it wasn't a rural area, so of course there may be some dirt on the pristine Jeep. Which, if he wanted to cover that up, I guess he could have gone by a car wash and just sprayed it down, and like nobody sees the dirt. If he's, you know, that trying to deceive and hide things. And heard from Miguel again. More new witnesses. Mr. Palmer at the gas station, he filled it up with gas. And then the detective that had gone through some trash, found the hand truck thing. If he's moving out, might you need a hand truck from the 3rd floor down, all the way down. You know, that was later, and then much was made about the safe. I mean, maybe he likes that type of safe and he wants to get his own to have. Nothing wrong with that. Then there was Dante Anderson. We heard from him yesterday morning, maybe. He was at the Ace Hardware, and he's the one that actually moved it. Like, oh, let's bring that inside instead of throwing it away, for whatever purpose. And then we heard from Officer Lilly, he's sitting with the body cam, which you can watch again if you like. Heard from Mr. Weber. And you know the heart issues and the hospitalization and whatnot, but you guys remember the witnesses and what they said. I was going to go through some of the jury instructions before we're done here. And in there, the introduction, the first one, the introduction to homicide, the judge will indicate that a killing that's excusable or was committed by the use of justifiable deadly force is lawful. So the state is so certain we know exactly what happened, and it was murder with ill will and spite and hatred, and we have no evidence of it. But you'll be instructed that justifiable homicide is lawful, excusable homicide is lawful, and then you'll get to specifically the second-degree murder, that the death was caused by the criminal act of Christopher Davis, which there's zero evidence of. And that there was this unlawful killing with a depraved mind, and then that's kind of the definition of that is given to you, that it's imminently dangerous to another and demonstrating a depraved mind if one of them is done with ill will, hatred, spite, or evil intent. And so we don't know if anything like violent in history or anything of that nature. It's just, nope, let's just assume that's what happened, what took place, and he did it, and there's no other explanation. There's no evidence of it, and you're being asked to infer that's what took place. Our minds, I guess when we have a chain of events, kind of like in jury selection, when you ask, well, you went out and it snowed, and would you believe it snowed last night even though you didn't see it snowed because you see the snow on the ground? It's kind of like if you go out in the morning and the grass is wet, and you think, did it rain? I don't think it rained. The back patio wasn't wet, but now the grass is wet. Well, okay, I guess it rained. But then you later see your neighbor's sprinklers pop on, they just installed yesterday, you didn't know about. That's why it's wet. Oh, okay. Our minds want to try to explain things, but sometimes we get it wrong. Then later you'll go into the elements of the fraudulently used the cards. Chris moved in, Barry was taking care of him. From the evidence, Chris, there was no evidence he was working at a job or had his own funds. So nothing was done fraudulently in these aspects. He was allowed to use these cards, he was given the cards, and please look at the records and you'll see the charges before the 19th that helps show evidence of the use of the cards before then. Later in the instructions, the judge will go into plea of guilty, reasonable doubt, and burden of proof. That to overcome the defendant's presumption of innocence, it's the burden on the state to prove the crime charged. The defendant committed it beyond a reasonable doubt. And I argue to you that the state has not proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. And with the defendant being presumed innocent, there's no reason for him to even testify. He's entered a plea of not guilty. And there'll be instructions regarding that. Also, it's the evidence introduced in this trial, and to it alone, you were to look for that proof. So you can't infer there's this other evidence or infer these other things that happened. It's only to the evidence introduced in this trial. And so when you only look at that, there's alternate explanations exactly what could have happened and what really happened. In a reasonable doubt, the judge will instruct you. Reasonable doubt as to the guilt of the defendant may arise from the evidence, conflicts of the evidence, or the lack of evidence. I'd argue it's the lack of evidence in this case. The big glaring holes or periods that the state says, no, this is exactly what happened. This is what must have happened because next, this is what happened. And there's multiple other explanations for it. If you have a reasonable doubt, you should find the defendant not guilty. That's exactly what I'm asking you to do. And with the instructions, you'll be asked to go back, pick a foreperson, which is someone who kind of leads the jury selection meeting, And then you go through the instructions and any evidence you'd like to see, and go through the verdict form. But I submit, that's why I asked you to wait till you make any fixed opinion, use your common sense. And at the end of this, I think you'll find the state has not proven the case beyond a reasonable doubt, and the verdict should be not guilty, but also the defendant's innocent. Let the guy go. Thank you.